February 21, 1943. The sun barely crests the jagged peaks of the Atlas Mountains, casting long shadows across the parched plains of Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The wind carries a bitter chill, dust stinging the eyes of soldiers as they crouch behind battered tank turrets. Explosions echo off rocky cliffs, metal screeching under the fire of German 88 guns. You can almost hear the derisive whispers in the Allied command tent. "He'll get himself killed," mutters one officer, shaking his head at the reports. "Patton, too reckless, too aggressive. He doesn't understand the terrain or the enemy." You feel the tension, the simmering doubt, and the subtle fear lurking behind every skeptical glance. Meanwhile, General George S. Patton leans over the map table, the leather of his gloves creaking as he traces armored routes across the desolate valley. His face is stern, eyes burning with determination. There's no hesitation here, only calculation. Every ridge, every sun-scorched hill, every German defensive position is already in his mind. Patton doesn't flinch at the mockery. He thrives on it. Down below, the American 1st and 9th Infantry Divisions are battered and broken. They've taken hits from seasoned Afrika Korps units, their lines fractured by German speed and precision. Officers are worried, morale is low, and whispers of retreat grow louder. But Patton sees what they cannot: an opening, a weakness in the German flank, a chance to turn chaos into opportunity. And then, almost like a spark in a dry field, he makes his move. Steel roars across the pass. M4 Sherman tanks grind forward, their tracks carving deep furrows into the dirt. Artillery shells scream overhead, landing with thundering impact behind enemy lines. The Germans, confident and cocky, expect another cautious advance, another hesitant probe. They are about to discover exactly how wrong they are. Patton's men feel the electricity of his presence. He rides from tank to tank, shouting orders with a voice that cuts through the din of battle. Move, flank them, do not let them regroup. Every command is precise, every maneuver deliberate. There's no hesitation, no second guessing, just the relentless push of a general who believes nothing is impossible. From the cliffs above, you can almost see the German soldiers, elite veterans of the Afrika Korps, tightening their grips on their rifles. They had mocked the Americans for weeks, expecting them to crumble like brittle desert glass. But now a line of tanks is pivoting behind them, artillery landing in perfect rhythm, and suddenly the threat is all too real. Panic begins to seep in. Patton doesn't just attack, he isolates, he pinches. He maneuvers his forces with a clarity that borders on audacity. Each Sherman tank, each artillery barrage, drives wedges between German formations. It's a deadly dance of metal and fire, choreographed by a mind that thrives in chaos. The officers who had mocked him just days before cannot believe what they are witnessing. And then comes the first hint of what no one expected. Entire German units beginning to falter, some halting, unsure where the next American strike will come from. The arrogance of the Afrika Korps meets the sheer, unrelenting drive of Patton's tactics. Something is about to happen here, something that will turn skepticism into shock, mockery into awe. The morning haze still lingers over Kasserine Pass, but now it's pierced by the thunder of approaching Sherman tanks. You can almost feel the tremor of the engines underfoot, rattling sand and rock as Patton's armored columns pivot like predators closing in on prey. Every movement is precise, calculated, not reckless, despite what the doubters say. Patton's voice carries over the chaos, sharp and commanding. Cut their line, hit them where they're weakest. Artillery officers coordinate with radio operators, plotting fire zones that will trap German forces between steel and shell. The Afrika Korps, confident in their superior maneuverability, had assumed they could roll over the inexperienced Americans. But now the tables have turned. On the right flank, Major General Lloyd Fredendall's hesitant infantry watches in awe as Patton's tanks swing around a ridge, emerging behind the German rear. There is a moment, a heartbeat, where time seems to pause. You can see the soldiers freeze, rifles half raised, eyes widening as they realize the Americans are not just attacking, They are encircling them. Machine guns rattle. Mortars explode. German officers bark frantic orders, trying to rally their men, but it's too late. Patton's flanking maneuver is surgical, cutting supply lines and severing communication between divisions. The once confident Africa Corps units are now trapped, boxed in by steel, dust, and relentless fire. And yet Patton does not slow. He drives forward, personally inspecting the front lines, shouting encouragement, correcting formations. Forward, don't let them breathe. His presence alone electrifies his men. The battlefield becomes a symphony of motion, tanks pivoting, artillery shells screaming, infantry advancing, each element perfectly synchronized. From the German side, panic spreads like wildfire. You can almost see it in the eyes of Oberstleutnant Friedrich von Browich, commanding one of the isolated divisions. He had underestimated Patton, laughed at American armored tactics, and now, cornered and outmaneuvered, he watches his soldiers falter. Orders collide and contradict. Lines dissolve into chaos. By midday, the flanking attack has done its work. Entire companies surrender to the Americans, raising their hands in disbelief. The dust hangs thick in the air, obscuring the shattered terrain, but the sound of surrender, voices raised, rifles lowered, cuts through the din. Patton's audacity has done what skepticism could not imagine. He has captured a division almost single-handedly, turning what had been mockery into awe. Yet even as the surrender is accepted, Patton is not done. He knows the German command will regroup, will try to reclaim lost ground. He moves quickly, reorganizing his forces, preparing for the inevitable counterattack. There is no celebration, only the next problem, the next move in a deadly chess game where the stakes are life and death. And somewhere behind the lines, Allied officers who had doubted him sit in stunned silence. They had laughed at his aggressiveness, criticized his impatience, dismissed his unconventional approach. Now they cannot deny the results. Patton has rewritten the rules of engagement in Kasserine Pass, forcing a realization that will echo through the Allied command. Boldness can be more powerful than caution, speed more deadly than hesitation. But the battle is not over. The Germans will respond. And Patton, relentless and unyielding, knows exactly how to meet them. The sun dips low behind the jagged ridges of Kasserine Pass, casting long, blood-red shadows over the battlefield. Smoke curls from shattered tanks and craters, mingling with the metallic scent of spent shells. You can almost hear the exhausted groan of engines and the distant cries of soldiers, some triumphant, others defeated. Patton moves like a force of nature across the scarred ground, boots sinking into mud and dust, eyes scanning every ridge and valley. He is already thinking 3 steps ahead, calculating where the Germans might strike next. The surrender of a division is monumental, but he knows it is only the beginning. The real battle, the test of nerve and strategy, is just beginning. From the German side, whispers of disbelief reach higher command. Oberstleutnant von Browich has sent frantic messengers to Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. "They are insane, aggressive beyond reckoning," the notes read. "Their tanks move as if possessed. We cannot predict where they will strike next." Rommel's eyes narrow as he scans the reports. Could this be the moment the tide begins to turn? Patton, meanwhile, is reorganizing his battered divisions. Infantry units are exhausted, artillery crews are spent, and tank crews have seen more explosions than most men will in a lifetime. Yet under his watch, there is no panic. Every unit finds its place. Orders are shouted, scribbled, repeated. Soldiers follow him because they see a man who is unshakable, a commander who thrives on audacity where others falter. And then, at the edge of the pass, a German counterattack emerges. Panzer IVs thunder down the valley, their crews desperate to reclaim lost ground. You can almost feel the tension spike in the air. Metal clashes with metal, shells scream through the sky, and the earth shakes beneath the fury of armored warfare. Patton does not flinch. With a keen eye, he directs his artillery to strike where the enemy is most vulnerable. Sherman tanks pivot to intercept, and infantry holds critical chokepoints. It is a brutal ballet, chaos choreographed into deadly precision. The Germans, confident in their experience, meet resistance they never anticipated. By nightfall, the counterattack has been repelled. Patton's forces hold the pass. Entire German units lie in disarray, their morale shattered. Allied officers, once skeptical, now watch in stunned silence. They had doubted his methods, dismissed his aggression, and yet here he stands, turning a near disaster into a decisive defensive victory. But there is more at stake than just the tactical victory. The psychological impact is enormous. Patton has sent a message not only to the Germans but to his own allies. Audacity and speed can rewrite the rules of engagement. Hesitation will cost lives. Boldness, meticulously executed, can achieve the impossible. As night falls, the battlefield is silent except for distant fires and the occasional moan of the wounded. Patton surveys the terrain, calculating, relentless, already planning the next strike. The Germans are cornered, but will they surrender completely, or will they fight back with renewed ferocity at dawn? And in that moment, the officers who once mocked him cannot ignore it any longer. They see the truth. Patton's genius is not just in bravery, it is in seeing possibilities where others see only danger. Dawn breaks over Kasserine Pass, pale light spilling across twisted tanks and scorched earth. The air is thick with dust and smoke, carrying the acrid tang of gunpowder and fear. You can almost hear the shuffling of boots as the remaining German soldiers, exhausted and demoralized, surrender under the piercing glare of Patton's advance. Patton rides forward on his familiar chestnut horse, the reins clutched firmly in one hand, a clipboard in the other. His boots sink into the mud of the pass, but his eyes remain sharp, scanning for any sign of deception. Every soldier knows he is there, a living embodiment of audacity and resolve. They feel his presence like a pulse across the battlefield. Entire columns of the Afrika Korps halt, rifles lowered, flags raised in submission. Officers who once scoffed at Patton's tactics now stare in disbelief, their jaws tight, faces pale. They had mocked him, dismissed his bold maneuvers as reckless theatrics, but the reality is undeniable. Patton has captured an entire German division. Almost alone, through sheer audacity and precision, he has reshaped the battlefield. You can almost see the shock in the eyes of the German commanders. Oberstleutnant von Broich approaches cautiously, hands raised, offering his sword in surrender. The whispers of disbelief ripple through the ranks. Impossible, how did they? The soldiers had underestimated him, but now they stand as witnesses to what daring, speed, and relentless pressure can achieve. Allied officers, too, are stunned. Major General Fredendall, who had questioned every move Patton made, can only watch in awe as the surrender unfolds. Notes and maps that once carried skepticism now tremble in his hands. He sees what everyone else is beginning to understand. Patton doesn't just fight battles. He commands them, bending chaos into order with a vision that others lack. The American infantry steps carefully among the prisoners, guiding them into makeshift holding areas. Tanks roll past, their engines thundering, creating a rhythm that underscores the dominance of the Third Army. Every soldier knows they have been part of something extraordinary, a moment that will be studied for decades. And Patton, he barely allows himself a pause. Victory is a tool, not a trophy. Already he is calculating the next move, anticipating German retreats, counterattacks, and the terrain he will exploit. But for a fleeting moment, he allows the satisfaction of having silenced the doubters. He has proven that audacity, when married to precision, can achieve what hesitation cannot. The dust settles, but the echoes of this day will reverberate far beyond Kasserine Pass. Soldiers on both sides will remember it, not just for the surrender, but for the audacity that made it possible. The mockery has transformed into awe, disbelief into admiration, and the legend of Patton, already formidable, has grown immeasurably in the eyes of allies and enemies alike. Yet the war is far from over. The Afrika Korps still exists. Rommel is still calculating. Patton knows that this victory is only a prelude, a test of what his men and his strategy can endure. The real challenge lies ahead. The sun sets behind the jagged peaks, casting the battlefield in a fiery glow, the last tendrils of smoke curling into the purple dusk. The sand is dark with oil and blood, a mosaic of sacrifice and triumph. You can almost hear the exhausted sighs of men, both victorious and defeated, mingling with the distant groan of battered tanks settling for the night. Patton stands atop a ridge, surveying the valley below. The surrender of an entire German division lies in the dust at his feet, a feat no one expected, least of all those who had mocked him. You feel the weight of history pressing down, the realization that this moment is not just a tactical victory, but a statement. Boldness, decisiveness, and unrelenting pressure can reshape the battlefield entirely. Reports flow in from Allied officers who had doubted him. Major generals and colonels who had sneered at his aggressive tactics now scrambled to understand the methodology behind his audacity. How did he anticipate every move? One writes. How did he turn our failures into a decisive strike? Patton's vision has rewritten the rules of engagement in North Africa, and the implications are enormous. The soldiers under his command feel it too. Exhausted, bruised, and dusty, they recognize that they have witnessed brilliance in action. Their faith in leadership has been vindicated, their morale restored not through speeches but through results, through steel and fire, through strategy and relentless forward motion. The legend of Patton is no longer rumor. It is etched in the surrendering eyes of German officers and the battered but unbroken posture of his own men. Even across the Axis lines, whispers of disbelief travel quickly. Rommel studies the reports, grimacing as he realizes a single American general has turned what could have been disaster into a defining victory. The Afrika Korps had expected hesitation, caution, perhaps even panic, but they encountered precision, ferocity, and unpredictability. Patton has forced them to rethink everything. And yet, as victorious as the day is, Patton is already looking forward. Kasserine Pass was a proving ground, not the war itself. Lessons have been learned, reputations forged, and strategies tested. The Third Army is sharper, faster, and hungrier than ever. The Axis knows that wherever Patton advances, audacity will follow. This is the moment where mockery transforms into awe, hesitation into respect, and doubt into recognition. The Battle of Kasserine Pass will be remembered not just for the surrender of a division, but for the audacity of one man who refused to play safe, who saw opportunity in chaos, and who dared to act when others would wait. As night settles fully over Tunisia, the wind carries the faint echoes of what has been accomplished. You can almost feel it, the tremor of history beneath your feet. The legend of Patton is no longer theoretical. It is alive, etched into the landscape, the men, and the minds of all who witnessed it. And somewhere in the shadows, the question lingers. If audacity can achieve this in Tunisia, what might it accomplish next?